sharing. Mick Barry, Richard Boyd Barrett and Brid Smith.
It's just myself and Paul, Deputy Murphy. I want to start by acknowledging I suppose it was more or less an online fight, but the big fight that was put up today by the environment movement, the climate movement, to force the government to be accountable on the question of fracked gas from North America, and to do so before they sign off on the projects of common interest on Friday. It took a row, a press conference and tens of thousands of emails from many people across Ireland, and some of them are here tonight, and you're very welcome, and thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you again tomorrow, to really make the Business Committee and the Government see sense. We must discuss this issue tomorrow, so I'm going to hold my fire on most of that until tomorrow. But I want to thank the movement for holding the government to account. But to go back to the UN and the statements made at the UN, I think, like millions of people across the globe, you would have to be struck by the words of Greta Thunberg at the UN Climate Council, and especially when she talked about the fantasy of money and eternal growth. It was a very anti-capitalist, really, we need system change statement. But then you think of the fantasy of the words of our Taoiseach when he went on to say, we're great in Ireland, we're banning oil exploration in 80% of our shores, sometime after 2035, maybe even further, maybe 2040 or 2050. But while we do that, we're going to keep looking for gas, because Corrib will run out and we're going to need it. And because if the earth burned all of the gas reserves and none of the oil or coal starting tomorrow, then according to the Climate Advisory Council, who obviously advised him, the earth has a 66% chance of limiting warming to under 2 degrees. This is a very, very skewed interpretation of the IPCC report, because what it assumes is that you are talking about the unknown reserves of fossil fuels, so we can keep digging for them because they're unknown, but in fact all of the science tells us that it is 66% of the known fossil fuel reserves that they refer to. Now, Minister, I want to ask you, would you get on a plane if you were told that you had a 66% chance of landing safely? And do you think, therefore, that it's okay for your government to continue to support fossil fuels with the same chances of crashing the entire planet? But you know, as everybody does, and the Taoiseach knows it, that we're not going to stop burning coal and gas overnight globally tomorrow, and we have to stop burning any more reserves. But we also know that if we leave 80% of proven reserves in the ground, we have some chance of limiting global temperature rises. But the Taoiseach stands in the UN, makes flowery speeches, listening to Greta and the millions of school children. The other element of his solution, of course, was we are going to increase carbon taxes and ring-fence them for climate initiatives. Interesting, though, when you think about it, it's only a week away from the budget, and all the talk of is a €6 per tonne increase this year, and that will be ring-fenced. Do the maths, and I asked the Department of Public Expenditure about this. You probably end up with €6 per tonne with 108 million to spend on climate initiatives. Are you going to sort out the Bordnamona workers? Do you think you'll have enough to sort out a just transition for the people in Bordnamona and in Moneypoint? Do you think you'll have enough to provide supports for those who need renewable energies in their homes, need retrofitting? Do you think indeed you'd have enough to start investing in renewables? All the carbon tax will do is act as a double tax, a punitive measure on those who can least afford it. And at the same time, and this is a really interesting bit, your government continues to block the climate emergency bill, and you continue to support exploration for gas and oil. And we have known through the FOIs and the good research done by journalists that the lobbying that took place in this House has been extraordinary, not just from the native fossil fuel industry, but from companies based in China, from ExxonMobil. Some of the biggest fossil fuel giants in the world have been leaning on you and your department not to support this bill. As somebody once said, the bill has spooked the fossil fuel industry, and I hope that the movement on the streets will also spook them. You continue to rely on the profits to invest in renewable energy, but you should be creating a state-run renewable energy company that will leave the environment and the planet in the hands of security and a proper future for our kids. If you rely on profit, then you're going down the wrong road, and that's exactly what has happened. Kevin Anderson, the scientist, once said, "Nature cannot be fooled." And our government might want to pretend that fracked gas will emit less greenhouse gas than oil. You may pretend that 1 million EVs on the road and a growth in the beef and dairy herd and hundreds of data centres are somehow a climate-friendly policy. But the atmosphere and nature will not pretend, and the climate will not join you in that pretence. It will continue to hurtle out of control. I'm going to finish now to give Deputy Murphy the time that he deserves, but I just want to finish by saying that next week is the week of Extinction Rebellion, Rebellion Week. The school students and others will be on the streets, and the first thing they demand is tell the truth. And this is what this department finds impossible. Tell the truth about science, tell the truth about what needs to be done. And if Leo Varadkar in the UN had considered that demand, we wouldn't have heard that sort of flowery language. We would have heard the real truth about what this department is not doing.
Deputy Murphy.
Thanks, Cahillach.